The trade deadline is getting closer and closer, and the Oilers, after starting hot, are very much in the thick of the Western Conference playoff race. The problem is, so are many teams. So Edmonton likely looking to add at the trade deadline to ensure they don't miss the postseason for the 13th time in 14 seasons. So with that in mind, let's bring in our Sportsnet.ca Oilers writer, Mark Spector, to talk about what the main need is ahead of the deadline. So Mark, before we get into names specifically, I imagine your sentiment is the same as many others. The team still needs to find a way to slot someone effectively next to Connor McDavid. True or false?
That is for sure true, Faizal. Listen, this isn't a perfect team. Could they use more depth on defense? Absolutely. Do they need a third-line center? The coach might say that's what I need more than anything. But as a guy that watches the team and has watched how the Draisaitl second line with Nugent Hopkins and Yamamoto has made this team so much more dangerous, I'm looking at Connor McDavid, who's playing with depth players most nights on his wings. James Neal's has been hurt. And I am saying to you, if they could put a left winger next to Connor McDavid that's like a 25-goal guy, I think they'd have something there.
So let's talk about left wingers that may be available. Let's start macro. What are some names that you think might fit the bill next to McDavid? Although I guess any player would fit the bill next to McDavid, but identifiable targets, I guess, ahead of the trade deadline.
Yeah, what he's proven is guys like Pat Maroon can have a career year. Alex Chason can have a career year. Zach Cassidy can have a career year. So playing with McDavid helps, let's face it. That's a scoop, by the way. What you want is a proven 20, 25-goal guy who next to McDavid would be a proven 40-goal guy. So let's throw some names out. I think the best guy in the league right now in that position would be Thomas Tatar in Montreal. Now, is the price going to be too rich? Does Ken Holland want to give up a first-round pick? I think that's a separate conversation. We're throwing some names out there. I'm going to start with Thomas Tatar, 20-goal guy every single year, it seems like. Let's go down the list to a New Jersey team that's definitely a seller. I like Kyle Palmieri. Always liked him when he played in Anaheim. He's a guy that can put a good feed away. He's just got the shot. He's the kind of guy that could play well next to 97. Some history in Detroit, another team that's clearly a seller with Andreas Athanasiou. We have not seen the first trade yet between Steve Yzerman, the new GM in Detroit, and Ken Holland, the old GM in Detroit. But I'm telling you, it's going to come soon. Why not at the deadline with Athanasiou? And while we're talking about guys that maybe we didn't think we'd be talking about, Faizal, what about Ilya Kovalchuk? I think that's a guy that Montreal thought, if we're not in this race, if we're sellers, we're going to turn him into something. Well, boy, if he can play in Montreal, I bet you can play here in Edmonton.
Of those five that you identified, who do you think would be the most optimal in terms of cost, in terms of playing style for this Oilers team at the deadline?
Okay, I'm going to say this. Ken Holland's looking at his team and he's saying, look, we're not a Stanley Cup contender. He knows what a Stanley Cup contender looks like. I don't think he sees this team as one that can win 4 rounds. I think he looks at it as a team coming out of a iffy Pacific that could win 2 rounds. So what I'm saying is this. He's not giving up a first-round pick this year. He does not want to give up a first-round pick if he's not going to win a Stanley Cup with the acquisition. So let's look at a guy like Athanasiou. I think Yzerman and Holland should be able to make a deal. I think you can get Athanasiou for something less than a first-round draft pick, which is, I think, the bridge Holland's not willing to cross. So if you're asking me to pick one guy out of that herd, Faizal, let's go with a guy from Detroit, Andreas Athanasiou.
5 guys you identified, he has the lowest point total so far with 7 goals, 14 assists, which might make his availability a little easier than maybe some of those other guys who might garner some more assets right now. All right, so left wing is the most optimal place of trade. In your eyes, what's the second most? We won't get into the names. I won't put you there, but if they can't find a guy to slot next to McDavid, where else should they try to find strength right now?
They need a third-line center, a guy that can win some face-offs. What they have in Riley Sheahan and a young rookie here named Gaetan Haas, they've got 2 fourth-line centers. What they need is a third-line center, a legit guy, maybe a guy like Grant from Anaheim, maybe a guy like Pajot from Ottawa, I think fits the mold of probably being too expensive, Faizal. But what they need is a guy that can push Riley Sheahan, who's been very effective, down to where he should be, which is as a fourth-line center. They need a legit third-line guy here. That is probably an itch that Ken Holland needs to scratch as well before this team could ever be considered to be, a true contender.
I got to ask one more thing. How bad would it be optic-wise if they missed the postseason again?
Well, obviously bad. This team's missed 12 years out of 13. I'm going to say this to you. No team in the history of the National Hockey League in all its years has missed the playoffs 13 out of 14 years. So nobody wants that anchor around their neck. I also should tell you this. If this was more of a rebuilding year, the fans here could understand it a little bit because there's a new coach, there's a new GM. But this is a good team. This team's 1 point out of first place to Pacific. They've been right near the top of their division the entire season. They got the 2 top leading scorers in the National Hockey League. And, they've got some depth now. This is a pretty good team here, Faizal. It's much better than teams in recent years. So it would be a failure at this point if this team didn't make the playoffs. I fully expect them to make the playoffs. And in this division, if you can make the playoffs, I'll tell you what, you could win a round, maybe 2.
The top 5 teams separated by just 4 points. Under 2 weeks to go to the NHL Trade Deadline, we shall see what the Edmonton Oilers get up to. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you.